Srimad Bhagavatam class. Jayarad Madhava. This time the class will be in English. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopinath Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya
Narayanam Namaskritam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Tato Jayamudiraye
Tato Jayamudiraye.
Nashtapraya Svabhatreshu
Nashtaprayeshna Badrishu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Bhagavatyuttama Shloke
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke.
Bhaktirtavati Naishtiki
Bhaktirbhavati Nashtaki.
Hare Krishna. We are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, and now we are starting a new chapter, chapter 5, which is entitled Narada Muni Cursed by Prajapati Daksha. And I will read the summary first. Chapter 5 Narada Muni Cursed by Prajapati Daksha. This chapter relates how all the sons of Daksha were delivered from the clutches of the material energy by following the advice of Narada, who was therefore cursed by Daksha. Influenced by the external energy of Lord Vishnu, Prajapati Daksha begot 10,000 sons in the womb of his wife, Panchajani. These sons, who were all of the same character and mentality, were known as the Haryashvas. Ordered by their father to create more and more population, the Haryashvas went west to the place where the river Sindhu, now Indus, meets the Arabian Sea. In those days, this was the site of a holy lake named Narayanasaras, where there were many saintly persons. The Haryashvas began practicing austerities, penances, and meditation, which are the engagements of the highly exalted, renounced order of life. However, when Srila Narada Muni saw these boys engaged in such commendable austerities simply for material creation, he thought it better to release them from this tendency. Narada Muni described to the boys their ultimate goal of life and advised them not to become ordinary karmis and beget children. Thus, all the sons of Daksha became enlightened and left, never to return. Prajapati Daksha, who was very sad at the loss of his sons, begot 1,000 more sons in the womb of his wife Panchajani, and ordered them to increase progeny. These sons, who were named the Savalashvas, Haryashvas and Savalashvas, also engaged in worshipping Vishnu to beget children. But Narada Muni convinced them to become mendicants and not beget children. Foiled twice in his attempts to increase population, Prajapati Daksha became most angry at Narada Muni and cursed him, saying that in the future he would not be able to stay anywhere, since Narada Muni, being fully qualified, was fixed in tolerance. He accepted Daksha's curse. And now there's a series of texts without any purports. So I will read them through from 1 to 5, and then there's 3 verses in a row on from texts 6 to 8. So you'll get more detailed into that. Text 1. Srila Sukadev Goswami continued, impelled by the illusory energy of Lord Vishnu, Prajapati Daksha begot 10,000 sons in the womb of Panchajani Asikni. My dear king, these sons were called the Haryashvas. Text 2. My dear king, all the sons of Prajapati Daksha were alike in being very gentle and obedient to the orders of their father. When their father ordered them to beget children, they all went in the western direction. Text 3. In the west, where the river Sindhu meets the sea, there is a great place of pilgrimage known as Narayana Saras. Many sages and other advanced in spiritual consciousness live there. Texts 4 and 5. In that holy place, the Haryashvas began regularly touching the lake's waters and bathing in them. Gradually becoming very much purified, they became inclined toward the activities of Paramahamsas. Nevertheless, because their father had ordered them to increase the population, they performed severe austerities to fulfill his desires. One day, when the great sage Narada saw these boys performing such fine austerities to increase population, Narada approached them. And we can do text 6 responsibly from this bundle of verses. So please repeat. Uvacha kata haryashva.
Uvacha chatha haryashva.
Uvacha chatha haryashva.
Uvacha chatha haryashva.
Katham sakshyatha vaiprajaha.
Katham sakshyatha vaiprajaha.
Katham sakshyatha vaiprajaha.
Katham sakshyatha vaiprajaha.
Atristvanta bhuva yu. Atrishtvantam bhuvo yuyam.
Atristvantam bhuvo yuyam.
Atrishtvantam bhuvo yuyam.
Atristvantam bhuvo yuyam.
Balisha bhatapalakaha.
Balisha bhatapalakaha.
Balisha bhatakapalakaha.
Balisha bhatapalakaha.
Uvacha chathadharyasva.
Uvacha chatha haryashva.
Katham srakshyatha vaipraja.
Katham sakshyatha vaiprajaha.
Atristvantam bhuvo yuyam.
Adrishtvantam bhuvo yuyam.
Balisha bhatapalakaha.
Balisha bhatapalakaha.
Next, please. You can recite.
Uvacha chatha haryashva.
Uvacha chatha haryasva.
Katham srakshyatha vaiprajaha.
Katham srakshyatha vaiprajaha.
Adrishtvantam bhuvo yuyam.
Atristvantam bhuvo yuyam.
Balisha bhatapalakaha.
Balisha bhatapalakaha. Word for word. Headcan. Wait. Okay, I just to quickly recite the other verses also. Tathaika purusam rastram bilam chadrishta nirgamam bahurupam striyam chapi pumam sam pumschali patim nadim ubhayato vaham pancha panchadbhutam griham kvachitham sam chitra katham kshaura pavyam swayam prami. And word for word, Uvacha,
Uvacha,
he said, Cha, also, Atha, thus,
Haryasvaha,
O Haryasvas, son of Prajapati Daksha,
sons of Prajapati Daksha.
Katham, why? Sakshyatha, you will beget. Why? Indeed. Praja, progeny. Adristva,
Adrishtva,
having not seen,
having not seen,
Antam,
Antam,
the end,
the end,
Bhuvaha,
Bhuvaha,
of this earth,
of this earth,
Yuyam,
Yuyam,
all of you,
all of you,
Balishaha,
Balishaha,
inexperienced,
inexperienced,
Bata,
Bata,
alas,
alas,
Palakaha,
Palakaha,
although ruling princes.
all the ruling princes.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
The great sage Narada said, My dear Haryashvas, you have not seen the extremities of the earth. There is a kingdom where only one man lives, and where there is a hole from which, having entered, no one emerges. A woman there who is extremely unchaste adorns herself with the various attractive dresses, and the man who lives there in her is her husband. In that kingdom there is a river flowing in both directions, a wonderful home made of 25 materials, a swan that vibrates various sounds, and an automatically revolving object made of sharp razors and thunderbolts. You have not seen all this. Therefore, you are inexperienced boys without advanced knowledge. How then will you create progeny? Purport. Narada Muni saw that the boys known as the Haryashvas were already purified because of living in that holy place and were practically ready for liberation. Why then should they be encouraged to become entangled in family life, which is so dark that once having entered it, one cannot leave it? Through this analogy, Narada Muni asked them to consider why they should follow their father's order to be entangled in family life. Indirectly, he asked them to find within the cores of their hearts the situation of the Supersoul, Lord Vishnu, for then they would truly be experienced. In other words, one who is too involved in his material environment and does not look within the core of his heart is increasingly entangled in the illusory energy. Narada Muni's purpose was to get the sons of Prajapati Daksha to divert their attention towards spiritual realization instead of involving themselves in the ordinary but complicated affairs of propagation. The same advice was given by Prahlad Maharaj to his father, Srimad Bhagavatam 755. Tatsarmanye suravarya dehinam sada samudvikna dhiyam asatgrahat hitvatmapatam kriham andhakupam vanam gato yadharim ashrayeta. In the dark well of family life, one is always full of anxiety because of having accepted a temporary body. If one wants to free himself from this anxiety, one should immediately leave family life and take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Vrindavan. Narada Muni advised the Haryashvas not to enter household life. Since they were already advanced in spiritual knowledge, why should they be entangled in that way? Hare Krishna. Om Akyanati Mirandasya Kyananjana Salakaya Chaksurunnitam Yena Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha Mukham Karati Vachalam Panumanate Girim Yat Kripata Mamande Shri Guru Dina Taranam Paramananda Madhvam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. So I beg the blessings of all the assembled Vaishnavas and seniors, both here in the temple room as well as there in the internet world, so that I could speak from Srimad Bhagavatam truthfully, pleasingly, and beneficially, especially for my own purification. Hare Krishna. And so this topic here today is reasoning why one should stay single. Srila Prabhupada said uh, that all the women they should get married and all the men they should remain single. So this is a kind of a contradiction, and here is actually the reason why men should remain single. One of the classic examples. Um, so this scenery is also interesting. There's the verse Akama Sarvakama Va Mokshakama Udarari Tivrena Bhakti Yogena Yacheta Purusham Param. So whether one is without any material desire, or one is full of material desires, or if one desires liberation, uh, one who has a little broader intelligence should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So these boys were performing austerities to please their father, and they lived in a place of sages, so they were in a spiritually very healthy environment, and their austerities seem to be very bona fide because their austere activities uh, like awakened Narada's Muni's interest. So these boys were, Haryashvas were very good devotee candidates. Um, and their father also, Daksha, in the previous chapter, was called the Hamsa Guhya prayers of Daksha. So Daksha was also performing austerities, and he wanted to please the Supreme Lord, but he had a motivation. So these boys also had motivation um, to please their father, but they were kind of inexperienced about life in general, what it is to be in marriage life, and what it will be like. They just thought that they have a mission to accomplish to execute the order of their father. Uh, so Prajapati Daksha, he definitely had experience about family life, and uh, and he was Prajapati. He was creating progeny even in his previous life, and this time he had just made prayers so that he could very nicely execute this mission of creating progeny. So that means a lot of sex life. But these boys were considered to be inexperienced, like innocent. They just wanted to follow the order of their father. So Narada Muni saw them performing austerities, and like Prabhupada says here in the purport, they were already on a liberated stage. So why should they get entangled in family life? Like sometimes it is said that if you have a certain standard of deity worship going on, then you shouldn't lower the standard. You can increase the standard by taking more responsibilities of the deity, but do not go backwards. And in this case, the settlement would be the same. They were already liberated by their austerities, liberated from material entanglement. Why should they get their uh, subtle body dirty with material desires by engaging in family life? Okay, family life is very attractive in a sensual way, in a materialistic way, and it definitely affects uh, the subtle body. But these boys, they were already liberated. It's interesting to try to understand what means liberation. That if one, like, there was quoted this Prahlad Maharaja's verse to Hiranyakashipu: if one wants to free himself from this anxiety of dark well of family life, then one should immediately leave the family life and take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and go to Vrindavan.
Krishna.
Yeah, some devotees do get a little bit distracted with this idea. They want to live family life because it's so complicated, and then their motivation is to get rid of all the responsibility of family life. That is there, that active family life. I mean, it's also not really recommended to, if especially if the children are very small and you just leave the wife alone and with the small kids. That's not really the proper idea, proper thinking. But when the children are grown, have their own families, then you need to reestablish yourself spiritually again and concentrate on vanaprastha life. Go to the forest and concentrate on your bhajana, your sadhana. Take your spiritual life in very strongly in the center of your life. So this is the recommendation. That's the idea how we should spend our human life, to put Krishna in the center. Of course, we need to try to put Krishna in the center as much as we can, also in the family life. That's the idea of Grihastha. Otherwise, Grihamedi ashram is there. If it is an ashram where sense enjoyment is in the forefront, and in the materialistic life, that the sense enjoyment, you give pleasure to your spouse. That is like a prerequisite of materialistic family life. If that's not there, Prabhupada says that if there's a disappointment in sex life, in a family life, then the family is, or that marriage is very much likely to end very quickly. But uh, but to give very deep thought and endeavor for proper Grihastha ashram, then that is what is recommended. But here, family life altogether is condemned as something undesirable. So it brings my mind that one time we had a Sunday feast class, and then after the class, there was one guest who asked that. Can one smoke a cigarette and chant the Hare Krishna at the same time? So the answer was very interesting. The lecturer said that when you smoke a cigarette, you can chant Hare Krishna, no problem. But when you chant Hare Krishna, you can't smoke a cigarette. So that actually meant two different kinds of levels of spiritual establishment. I mean, it's for anybody. It's beneficial to chant Hare Krishna. So one is compared to be in such a level that he cannot stop smoking, and he's more attracted to smoke a cigarette, and so he's in that mood of that's part that it is part of his life to smoke. So better you chant Hare Krishna, take chanting Hare Krishna to your life, nevertheless. Oh, so uh, and make progress from that particular stage. But when you are on the stage that you think you consider the chanting Hare Krishna to be prominent, then don't smoke anymore. So this is two kinds of levels. For some devotees, like Srila Prabhupada and one of his disciples, they were discussing that one of his disciples got sannyas, another disciple uh, didn't want to. He was asking if I should take sannyas also, and Prabhupada said because Prabhupada sees people, he sees what they are about. So he gave instruction to the other disciple, no, you should get married. And next day he was introducing Prabhupada, his fiance. So first he was thinking that maybe he should take sannyas, but Prabhupada knew that he was not ready. So for some people it's more beneficial to get married. But then, even though married or not, it's good to see what is the goal of life and what kind of spiritual mentality we should develop, at least to have such an attitude that we should make progress, spiritual progress. And in this way, Haryasvas were able to convince Narada Muni that they are ready to take renounced order of life and not return home. I mean, it's sometimes said, it is sometimes said that Krishna consciousness is very dangerous to your material life. Uh, like was it Jiva Goswami or Rupa Goswami who had this um, like a counter, how you say it, not counter argument, but saying things a little bit backwards. That if you want to enjoy material life, then do not go and see the deity of Govinda who resides at the Yamuna River. Yeah, because seeing Govinda deity, it's so attractive that you want to give up your material life altogether. And sometimes we hear from devotees also that um, they got a higher taste from practicing bhakti, being in connection with the devotees and practicing Krishna consciousness. That there's no return back to the material life. So in this way, it is considered that the service, the pure or unallied devotional service to Krishna fulfills all desires. Uh, Therefore, there's no point of going back in the materialistic life. It will be only something like imitation. One cannot get really like a real juice in it, any juice from it. But
Mm.
But we can also think about here's another perspective. Like in the Western world, the devotees they get to hear this thing: simple living, high thinking, and they move to the ashram and they live very simply and forget about a very elaborate materialistic life. But when they sometimes they notice that it's better for them still to get married, then what will their married life be like? Usually, it is like they have spent so and so many years in ashram, and they have skipped all the material education, and then they get to the Grihastha ashram and yeah, live very simple life because of lack of education. They don't get very highly paid jobs and like that. Uh, but for example, we have a lot of Indian devotees uh, around the world, in India and elsewhere where Indian devotees reside. Uh, Sometimes we see that they are very highly educated. They have and they have very good, nicely paid jobs, and they maintain their uh, um, still they maintain their spiritual life very nicely. They have some regular service or regular meeting with other devotees. So they do their family responsibility very nicely, and still they are very active in spiritual life. So this I think because I have seen this uh, happening so many times. So this is kind of uh, supportive idea, encouragement also that if there needs to be a family life for you, then you can make it opulent. But at the same time, well, we in a Western devotional world we hear that association with materialistic people is dangerous, and so. But these Indian people, our Indian devotees, they are in their regular jobs, but still they are able to maintain such a good standard of living, a good standard of spiritual life, have their deities at home and do the regular worship every day, chant Hare Krishna, chant their rounds. That's what Srila Prabhupada did also. I mean, he had a business and he was traveling and he was doing materially well until his workers practically robbed him and spoiled his business. So, and that time it was time for him to concentrate to spiritual life. So, but sometimes we see in the Western, amongst the Western devotees that when they do like this, they get a good job and they move outside the temple. Then then we suddenly don't really see them anymore so much. It may happen here in the Western world. So this is definitely a contrast that we should note, take into our notice, and uh, but in any case, this verse is, I mean, this settlement here in this part of Bhagavatam is encouraging us to be very steady and become more deeply in our sadhana, in our Krishna consciousness, so that even though we are in a material world, the material world doesn't take over. Like there's an analogy that water drop on a waxy surface of a lotus petal, it doesn't merge in or get immersed in lotus petal, but it does just stays as a water drop. So in the same way, we can be in the material world, but not affected by too much by the material world, and we can continue like this if we sincerely continue our bhajana chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and associate with the devotees, hear Srimad Bhagavatam, and continue our sadhana as nicely as possible. Hare Krishna. I can end this class here. If there's any questions or comments anywhere. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. This is a very important topic. So, how to say, hot topic, because we as Westerners, uh, this practice of Krishna consciousness for us first, even after 10 years, can be a little artificial, not inside my heart as my part of me. So I just try to imply it, but still it's little forceful or a little, how to say, sectarian. And in this way, when I practice this, then I cannot kind of have my one life, no, not life Krishna consciousness, and then I have my social life, but one life, and yeah, like all together. And the devotees, as you mentioned in India, or Indian Buddhists, they kind of have this already in the nature, and they able to maintain both, like very good active spiritual life, and at the same time they don't forget education, everything, so be wealthy. And I see in my life also, and as you say, in lives of others, of Western devotees, this lack. So what we should do then? The kind of how to uh, uh, overcome this. Let's say it needs time, we need time, or how we can educate, what kind of education we can get that we are not so sectarian, and we can just naturally go for uh, uh, taking higher education. So everything like really living Krishna consciousness, not just from the books. So what can be done? Maybe what, I don't know if I if it's you understand.
Yeah, that's
If I maybe
that is a good question. Like, how can we Western body devotees can maintain that externally materialistic life, looking like a materialistic life, but still maintain the Krishna consciousness there, like a healthy Krishna consciousness.
what is lacking? If it's happening, I see it's happening. So what is lacking?
Yeah. So what is lacking there if, in the Western devotees? Yeah. Well, something that just came in my mind was when Srila Prabhupada said that the problem with my disciples is that they are not afraid of Maya, because Maya can take over. So, yeah, maybe it takes a couple of generations to establish this kind of devotional culture in the Western devotees. So, uh, So maybe it also sounds a little bit like it's a good idea to somehow or another hang on to devotional service, no matter whether you are like poorly situated in the material world, like many times Western devotees are when they get married and leave the temple. So by any means, uh, uh, try to hang on to that spiritual standards as much as possible. Well, of course, if there's like a danger of due to that, if there's like at least danger of breaking of marriage, then I've heard Jaipadga Maharaj saying that even if your life is not so spiritual, at least keep your marriage together. So that's also kind of there. Um,
Hmm.
it is a bit difficult. Well, there are many kinds of devotees in the Western world. For some devotees, Krishna consciousness really made a revolution in their lives, and so that some devotees really got higher taste, like a genuine higher taste from Krishna consciousness. So no matter what situation they are, they cannot leave Krishna consciousness. Well, I was listening to Swayam Bhagavan Kesava Maharaj's class yesterday, and he pointed out this out that when a person comes to Krishna consciousness, then that's it. He cannot return to the material life anymore. He can be only a either happy devotee or a miserable devotee. Uh, so happy devotees are those uh, who take shelter of Krishna conscious association and doing happily their sadhana and service and continuing Krishna consciousness in this way. Or miserable devotees are they try to forget Krishna and go back to the material world, but they can't. And so, trying to enjoy material life after being Krishna consciousness, after being in Krishna consciousness, that's just artificial. I had something else in mind also. Oh yeah, um, I heard that there was an occasion with Srila Prabhupada one time. Also, that the Western devotees, when they went to India with to serve Srila Prabhupada there, and they had to deal with like general Indian people, and then they complained that like when they needed to buy something, then price-wise, the Indian merchants were like cheating them, getting them triple prices of the actual price, and so on. And so the disciples they complained about this to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada had said that, or they were also wondering how concerned about the general Indian people's Krishna consciousness.
Hmm.
So Srila Prabhupada said that the Indian people they are a lot closer to Krishna than you are. Just their backs are turned against Krishna. But if you can turn them back to Krishna, they make very rapid advancement. I mean, it is in their birth. The inclination toward Krishna consciousness. So this is a difficult task that Srila Prabhupada has come to give us Krishna consciousness here in the Western world. So I think there might be a little bit of struggle for still some generations. Mm,
When you say struggle for some generations, then it's kind of I feel hopeless because in my situation, then I
uh,
can do what I can best, but really to make my life. But Krishna consciousness, really, I imply that I don't live these two lives. It's just one life, and I can, how to say, and I can engage whatever I have facilities in the Krishna consciousness, uh, even living in the material world. But at the same time, like this living will be like the offering to Krishna. Now it's a little avoiding this artificially. This is my, but how to connect it to Krishna? This is kind of so it's more or less probably I got the answer from you that in all these situations or whatever happening to get the shelter of this devotees association. This is the most important and uh, spiritual practice itself
Sadhana.
and sadhana, and it will gradually help to, as I understood, that was the answer, and I kind of like it's practical, something what I can uh, apply, so that my life becomes like kind of like I can see that I by this practice I will be more and more able to see everything and to connect everything to Krishna, whatever I have, Lakshmi, I have some money or some facilities, computers, and anything, I don't know, job, my job,
Yes, yeah, it has been our
ordinary people also. I'm sorry.
yeah, it has
Devious
been
business.
by coming to this moment, we have somehow established the fact that our interest is to see or learn to see everything in connection to Krishna and use everything for Krishna's pleasure. That's a uh, kind of um, how I kind of lost my line of thought. Yeah, yeah. So we have two choices. We can ask ourselves, is this for me or is this for Krishna? That's practically it. I sometimes, or quite oftentimes, try to express my thought of observing Krishna everywhere. Like there's the verse in Bhagavad Gita, Yoma pasyati sarvatra sarvanchamai pasyati tasyaham na pranasyami satsanena pranashyati, famous verse 630. One who sees me everything, everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. So Krishna is in every atom that we see around us. So how many atoms do we see? So we can try to develop this kind of vision. So everything is uh, compiled of atoms, and Krishna is in every atom. So practically, there's nothing more than Krishna here. But this material world has been arranged in such a way that we have been given to a chance to think that there is no Krishna, because that has been our desire, and the material world does it very well. But we can understand that there's nothing but Krishna here. Like in the Chaturshloki verses, Krishna says that in the beginning there was only I when there was nothing else around. And then what you see now is also me, the personality of Godhead. And when everything is annihilated, annihilated. The only thing that remains is me. So these kind of things we can try to keep in mind and see everything in connection to Krishna and see how we can use them for Krishna's pleasure to re-establish our loving relationship with the Supreme Lord.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai,
Jai.
Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam
Jai.
ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare